Okay, we are recording. We are live. I've called this rather cheesily the Motivational Murray Hambro interview, and I have to just let Murray off the hook because he didn't come up with that title. I did. It was a bit cheesy. Then blame me. So I wanted to interview Murray because I've heard his story. I actually used to work with his wife, and we went to a wedding out in Florida. I think it was a few years ago as well. Not their wedding or my wedding or anything, but someone else's wedding. And so I've kind of heard of Murray's story from a distance, and I've really been inspired by the things that he achieves. And this is too motivational a story to keep it secret. So I'm just going to get straight in and ask you some questions because I want everyone else to hear and be motivated too. So the first thing I'm going to ask you, which seems a bit strange, but describe what your life was like before the 9th of December 2010.
Well, basically, I was just living a very happy, normal life. I grew up normally with, a normal, healthy child, had all my limbs, just touching on the limbs there. But so, yeah, I was a bit of a troublemaker when I was a kid. So that was basically the reason why I joined the army when I was 21. So yeah. I had two choices to make. I could either go down the route of sticking with being a bit of a bad boy and getting into trouble, or do something different with my life and get away from the bad people and do something good. So that was my choice. I joined the army, and I served 12 years with the Royal Tank Regiment, and that was pretty much the best decision I could have ever made. And I've been on a couple of operational tours, and like you touched on, you knew my wife, so we met each other a couple of years before. I deployed in operations, and so yeah, it was just a normal day-to-day life. And then in 2010, when was it? I think it was October. We deployed out to Afghanistan on Op Herrick 13. So lucky for some, just not for me.
Bless you. So you'd had this army life, you're a bit of a cheeky chappy, had a girl back at home, went out and went to Afghanistan. How did you feel about that? Because as somebody who's never been in the forces or the army or anything else like that, how does that make you feel when you get told, I'm going to be deployed out there?
The first time you go, it's kind of daunting, it's kind of scary. One thing I always say to people that have never been on operational tour, just be careful what you wish for, because some people are a little bit gung-ho and they're like, yeah, I'm going to save the world. It's going to be something out of Saving Private Ryan or Dunkirk or something. You think you're going to storm the beaches and win the day, and it's very much, it's not like that at all. When the trouble kicks off, it's not like in the films, it's like hours or days on end and stuff like that. Sometimes it can only literally be 5 or 10 minutes for the actual firefights and stuff like that. So a lot of the time you're sitting around just waiting, and then all of a sudden all hell breaks loose, and it's it gets a bit crazy. But the thought process behind it, I mean, I kind of I never really thought about it, because for me, the people that I served with or that I went on operations with, I knew they had my back, and vice versa. So it's not so much the job, although you're doing something that the politicians want you to fix. They have their arguments in Parliament, they ship us off to all these hostile places, we do all the good work, and some of them take the glory for it. So it's the brotherhood around you. You meet all these people lift you up when you're down, or you lift them up, and they save you. I mean, like one of my friends, he jumped out of his vehicle, he came running over to me, potentially through a minefield that he didn't even know anything about, and he put his life on the line to save my life. And I think that's where the army is special. It's more about the brotherhood than what it is the job, if that makes sense.
That's pretty cool. That's really cool, because that gives anyone that's watching, like me, who has never been in that kind of environment, gives them the perspective of what it's actually like. Like you say, it's not always like the films and things like that. So that said, cheeky chappy, you're in this brotherhood, everyone looks after you, and you know that you've got a job to do, you're just doing it, you're reactive. So what happened on the 9th of December 2010?
Yeah, so the 9th of December 2010, it was my unlucky day, as it were, but it's where my life changed. I was on a vehicle called a Warthog, so it's like an armoured personnel carrier or a people carrier, but it's based like a tank, so it's got tracks and all sorts. And we was working with two para at the time, and they had taken over a compound in Afghanistan that they were taking a lot of sniper fire, gunfire, and all sorts. So they couldn't get some of the stores down to these guys that had taken over this compound. So they called us in with the tanks with a little bit of armor. You know, the bullets tend to bounce off. And we went down, was doing supply runs throughout the day. And I was always the lead vehicle. So I was always the one at the front. Some people would get tired with it because basically you're always the one who's putting yourself in harm's way first, as it were. And my driver used to say to me, like, why are we always the first one? It's like, well, consider it an honour because we're getting there. We get people there safely. And we've done 5 runs throughout the day, taking all these stores down to help these guys so that, you know, they don't get themselves into any trouble. And it was only on the last run. So we was driving through a field, and track discipline is where you have every single vehicle stays in the tracks of the first vehicle. So it's like proven ground. So if anyone's driving over anything, it's like each vehicle is driven over the same ground. So throughout the course of the day, we'd done 5 runs. There was like 6 vehicles in the troop. So we'd driven over an IED, like, you know, however many times, do the math. And on the last run back, we was literally going back into the camp. I was thinking about, you know, what I'm going to have for dinner, me pie and chips and all sorts. And yeah, there was, what we didn't realise is that there was a Taliban soldier had crawled along an irrigation ditch and connected a battery pack to a legacy device. So a legacy device is an IED that's been underground for weeks, months, you know, however long. And they buried it, they've forgotten about it, and then they've seen that we've been driving over it. So they connected up the battery pack. And as I said before, I was the lead vehicle. And on the last journey home, back into camp, last thing of the day, my vehicle triggered this pressure plate IED, which then lifted my vehicle 10 feet in the air. I carried on going another 40 feet in the air, and then came down to earth with a thud. As I always say to my little boy, I've done my best Superman impression. And then that was it, you know. As I touched on before, one of my best friends, he jumped out of the vehicle behind. He put himself in harm's way. He came up to me, started doing the first aid, and because I was conscious for it all, I kind of rolled over and I said to him, I was like, "What happened, Nick?" And he laughed at me. He goes, "Oh, you've been blown up, mate. It was a blooming big one." I was like, "Oh, right." And he's there. He's like, "You should have seen your face." I was like, "Sorry, I forgot to," as I'm going through the air, sort of thing. So yeah, and they were doing all the first aid, and it was just as they were lifting me onto the stretchers and the other guys getting them into the back of the other vehicles, they started getting indirect fire. So they were doing the recovery under fire as well. So the para guys, literally, they didn't worry about their body armor and stuff like that. They came out with a helmet on and a rifle and just came running out and doing all the firefight stuff. So these guys are crazy. You know, they didn't even worry about their own safety. They just came belting out to help us out, which was, you know, really good.
Yeah, that's amazing. So amazing. It's funny because as you tell that story, you inject so much humor into it. You've got a way of like what could be told in a completely different way. It's an appropriate humor as well. And I'm laughing at it and thinking, gosh, that must look really bad that I'm laughing, but it's funny, you know, the way that you talk about that story, until you go to hospital, you get taken to hospital, and then what happens?
Yeah, so from the point of being blown up, I got taken back to the patrol base where we was, within 10 minutes, I think there was a helicopter picking me up. I was getting shipped back to Camp Bastion. So that was probably another 10 or 20-minute helicopter ride. I think I was on a lot of drugs at the time, so I think I blacked out for a little bit. But then I woke up into this bright white room. This was in Camp Bastion, and I didn't see anything apart from bright white. And I was like, bloody hell, I haven't made it up here, have I? And this voice in the background goes, "Nah, mate, you're in Camp Bastion having a scan." I was like, "Oh God, thank God for that." But you know, I do use humour a lot. I mean, that's just me. I've always said I'm too stupid, as it were. But yeah, so then it was just I was on the phone. The first thing I wanted to do was ring home and say, I'm okay, because one thing that the military does, as soon as someone's injured, they send people round to the family's house, to notify the parents or the next of kin before it gets to any sort of media, so they find out firsthand. So they literally got to my sister's front door and my mother's front door, and they must have said 3, 2, 1, knock, because they knocked at exactly the same time, and they're sort of saying that Corporal Murray Hambro has been involved in an IED blast. He's okay. He's still alive, sort of thing. And then the panic sets in. So I just wanted to phone home. I phoned my sister. I tried to phone my fiance, but she was too busy washing her hair or something. I don't know.
as the fiance does.
Yeah, exactly. So so at that point, I managed to get through to her as well. And then before I knew it, I was on the medical plane back to the UK. So within, I think, 24 hours, I was back home in the UK, in Birmingham, blue lighted to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital.
Yeah.
And then that's when they'd done a few more X-rays, and they basically turned around and said to me, like, you've smashed all the bones in your feet. They called them fractures. They said you got severe fractures. So I was like, oh right, fractures, that's not so bad. I'll be up and walking in 6 to 8 weeks. I'll be all right.
Yeah.
And they said no. These fractures, this is what we call it these days. It's not a break, it's a fracture. So basically what they meant was that the bones in my feet had just been shattered into small pieces.
Wow.
And they sort of said that one foot they could have repaired potentially, but I would have been in that hospital for 3 years. And the end result is a fusion or walking with a stick, constantly in pain, or even still amputating the foot later on. So they were asking me, do you want to keep 1 foot or two? And
what a question!
Yeah, exactly. And they were asking me, and I was on a lot. As I said before, I was on a lot of medication at the time. So I had to ask my fiance to do the sensible questions, because the questions I was asking was about, can I keep my feet? And the surgeon was like, why? Because I want to stick them in a pickle jar and use them for Halloween. And he's just looking at me with a straight face, as if to say, what's this guy on?
Yeah,
so but thankfully for me, my wife, she turned around and she said to the doctor, it's like, well, what's going to be the best, what do you recommend? And he said, well, basically I recommend we amputate both feet. His recovery time is going to be a lot quicker, and it just saves all the pain, the heartache of having all these operations and stuff. So she kind of made the decision for me to have both feet amputated. So I think within 36 hours, I was then a double amputee.
How life changed from being like cheeky chappy in the army and then there. So I think what's interesting to me, I mean, the whole story is of interest, but what's interesting to me is like what happened? What was the shift that took you from having had both of your feet amputated, or both, knowing about the damage in your feet and having that amputation, to the next thing, like what happens next? Because I can imagine the prognosis isn't great, and I know that doctors have a job to do and they need to tell you the highs and the lows. And I always say, like, if something happens to me, I don't want to know what can happen. Just tell me what I need to know, and that's it. So what happened from that point?
From that point, I think because I spent a little spell in intensive care and stuff, I wasn't really in a place to realise the extent of what was going on. I had my head sellotaped to a bed because I broke my back in 6 places. I couldn't move. Yeah, so there was a nurse that said to me, "Did you know you got some bruising on your ribs?" I was like, "No, I didn't." And as I sat up to look, everyone's jumping on me, jumping on me because I've broken my back in 6 places. And I'm like, "You can't move." So then they're literally duct taping my head to the bed so I couldn't move until I had a back and neck brace. But it was probably just as I came out of intensive care that I was able to. There was a couple of pictures taken. I mean, my mum, you know, she wanted to document it. I'm not sure what her reason was, but I guess now looking back, I'm quite glad that she did.
Yeah.
But there was a picture of me sat on the bed and just sort of hunched over to the side, and it was the first time I'd seen myself as an amputee. And by that point, I said to myself, well, I need to start picking myself up. What's next? So my first goal was to start walking. And because the goal leading off the back of that was that I was getting married in 2011, or I got married in 2011, and I didn't want any aids. So I didn't want no walking sticks, no crutches, no wheelchair or anything. So that was like my biggest motivation, was to get up, get walking, and, you know, be walking well enough to walk myself down the aisle on the wedding day.
Yeah, I mean, that's immense. So from a, you know, yes, I'm a coach and everything else, and I want people to understand why I find this story motivational. So the first thing is humour. The humour that you use throughout the story, it really does diffuse things, and it diffuses the situation. And I don't know if you found this. I've had a few interesting experiences myself, a few interesting life experiences. And sometimes when we talk about these sort of subjects, they're not often spoken about. People don't know what to do with it or how to take it. And I think humour it's a way of saying it's okay to listen to what I've got to say. It's all right. Do you think?
Yeah, it stops people feeling uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because, you know, things that have happened since being blown up, you know, is you know, there's things that I can't use humour for, and it gets a little bit sensitive. But I think by using humour, you knock down that barrier of, you know, I can't say these things. Because I live in shorts all the time since the amputation, so my prosthetics are on show quite a lot. I took my dog to the vets not so long ago, and he's like, "Don't your feet get cold wearing shorts all the time?" I was like, "You don't even know me. What's going on?" But I think it does knock down a barrier, which, you know, makes it a little easier to talk about stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing that you said a few moments back that I really wanted to highlight, and actually it happened for you metaphorically. This thing's happened, and then you open your eyes and you're surrounded by light, you know, which kind of almost led to a thought process. It's like a real life metaphor and a kind of just a not so real metaphor. But this thing about any situation that somebody seems as dark or anything else they might want to describe it, I love how kind of that light, metaphorically and physically, made you think, you know what, something's got to be different. And then the other thing that I wanted to say is I love that you asked that question of what's next. The weird thing about a question like that is I feel pretty sure that you didn't lie or sit there and go, right, what should I do next? And, you know, try and contrive it. It kind of like just appears in your head, doesn't it?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think you can either sit back and dwell on something, or you can, as I always say, build a bridge and get over it.
Yeah.
And that is the way I like to do things. I like to always keep moving forwards.
Yeah.
If I keep my brain ticking over, it stops me from sitting back thinking how bad my life is, you know, how unlucky I am and stuff like that. I can't think like that. Everything that I've done, especially since being blown up, I see myself as being very fortunate. I wouldn't say lucky, because you know, I don't believe in luck. You make your own luck, sort of thing. So
no, I love that. You definitely do. And as you say, it's interesting, because the thing that you probably don't see is that if this had happened to 100 other people in exactly the identical circumstances, everybody would deal with it in a different way. But the majority of people would actually go the other way kind of worries me. And it's interesting, you know, my dad, and I've never kind of said this publicly, my dad literally overnight lost his hearing about 20 years ago. And I remember thinking, gosh, that would depress me. I wouldn't want to go out. I wouldn't want to do anything. And one of the first things he did was started to help other people in similar circumstances. And I was just fascinated. I was like, what made him do that? Rather than, you know, anybody could have said to you, could have said to him, you know what, this is terrible. Just you take it easy. You stay where you need to stay. Don't you worry. We'll do everything for you. But you just went, no, stop that. I need to get walking. I need to do this thing. So I know that we've spoken before about this, and I wanted to ask you again on here. You know, you had this motivation to start walking and to get walking and to be walking down the aisle. Was there like a moment in time or a string of events or something that happened that made you think, you know what, I'm not putting up with this?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we was talking about it before we came on live, and basically, one of the things that the hospital done when I came out of intensive care, they paid for me and my wife to go for a Christmas dinner because it happened over Christmas. So Christmas Day, we went to a local pub in Birmingham, had a Christmas lunch, which was really nice. But this was the first time I'd been out of the hospital. I was in this absolute monster of a wheelchair. I mean, it was like a tank in itself. Yeah. And then I have my legs are up very much in the open with all these like big dressings and everything coming off them. And as soon as I sort of bumped in through this restaurant, and it was absolutely packed. I mean, every table was taken up, and all of a sudden, you've got all these eyes just focusing on you, and they're looking at your legs. You're looking at me. I've got this neck brace on. You know, everything's going on, and I think it was every single set of eyes just burning into me. I was like, oh God, I don't like this. So at this point, it was like, I think that was my wake up that things had to start moving on, and I needed to start moving on. So that was again where I turned around and said to people, I need to get through this, get walking. So then, you know, now if I go into any real public places, I can put trousers on and nobody knows the difference. And I think that was a real big moment for me. That was my big wake up call.
Yeah, I mean the time of year for that to happen as well. Because ironically, my life event happened the day before yours, on the 8th of December. And I remember that there's points where you kind of go into oblivion because you're not really thinking about it, and it consumes you. And then the next thing you know, we're coming up to Christmas, and Christmas is a time of year where even the most miserable people are like, yeah, hope all of your dreams come true. And I remember doing this swing of kind of trying to shut it out and then thinking, like, I don't think I handled it anyway. Thinking, you don't know what's happened in my life, you know, stop wishing that all my dreams have come true because it hasn't happened, you know, and kind of getting quite angry, which is like, I get angry, I joke, I get angry once every 7 years, you know. It's just not a thing that I'm familiar with. So you've got that. I think the significance of the time it happened as well, when you're in the run up to Christmas and everyone's wishing everyone well, then there's New Year. You know, let this be the best year, and you're thinking, wow, my life has just changed in a huge way. My life will never be the same. Yeah, how can I make this my best year? Am I ready to do it? And then you've got people around you who, generally speaking, are like, oh my gosh, these terrible things happen. No, you stay back there and don't be happy. And so it's a real strange place to be, and especially at that time of year. So, yeah, absolute kudos to you.
Yeah, I think some people don't help you either because they're like, oh, you know, your life is so bad at the moment. Yeah. Your injuries are terrible. Oh, my God. And you're like, all right, mate, calm down.
Yeah, stop.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
I think I know. I'm living it.
Before I went to Headley Court, the Forces Rehabilitation Centre, I thought, my God, I've lost both my legs. I've broken my back, my liver and my spleen and everything else. And I thought, God, there can't be that many people that are in a worse position than me. And then I got to Headley Court. I was like, wow, triple amputees, people that are, you know, missing half their vital organs, people that have had half their brains like taken away and they've got metal plates. But I was like, I'm just going to shut up now. And you know, there's always someone who's worse off than you. And you look at them smiling and beaming. You're like, if they can do it, then surely I can.
Yeah, I love that. If they can do it, I can. And I completely resonate with that. Human beings, we don't help ourselves by this whole comparisonitis and comparing ourselves to other things and other people. But what you just articulated there and described is perfectly the kind of like the best way to propel forward. Yeah, I again really resonate with that. Yeah, there's always somebody far better off. I remember so many times thinking, oh my gosh, that has got to be worse. There'll be people watching this thinking, I felt bad because I broke a finger, and now, oh my gosh, that's got to be worse. But the thing is, it's that mentality that goes through. Well, if somebody else can do it, so can I. And I think that's what's so motivational. Now, all of that has happened. You know, you're going through life. You've done the walking, but you don't stop with the walking down the aisle and walking and everything else. You decide to do something else pretty cool, pretty crazy. Tell them.
Yeah, so this next journey it still started on the day where I had my feet amputated. The surgeon said to me, he's like, what are your hobbies? And I said, I like motorbikes. I've always ridden motorbikes. And, you know, and the surgeon sort of shrugged his shoulders, like, well, you might want to think of a new hobby. And I don't know why that really stuck with me, but it really did. And as soon as I was able to start walking, I took myself down to the local motorcycle dealer. I bought myself a bike, and we adapted it for the road. And we had no idea how we were going to do it. We stood around it, drinking a cup of tea, scratching our heads together, but we came up with a way. And it worked. It wasn't the best way, but it worked. And it was good enough for me to ride on the road. And then I met a guy at a British Superbike weekend. And he'd done a hospitality day for me for a charity. And he had the mad concept of an injured serviceman's motorcycle race team. And he looked at me and he said, do you want to ride? Do you want to race? I was like, hell yeah. And
I'll do it.
Yeah, I mean, my wife at the time, my wife, she sort of looked at me and she's like, are you mad? I was like,
yeah, she's like, divorce.
But, yeah, so I got my road bike and I literally stripped it all back, turned it into a race bike, and I started motorbike racing. So I was the first double amputee to race a motorbike. And then I was the first double amputee to race motorbikes at a national level in the British Superbike Championship. And yeah, I mean, that was just a phenomenal experience. The people that I got to meet along the way, so many people telling me their stories that they never thought they would ride bikes again. And then they were coming up to me saying, seeing you ride has just made me go out and buy a motorbike. And I didn't know whether or not I should say yay or...
Yeah, don't do it.
Think twice.
Yeah, like kind of, it wasn't me. If you get into trouble with family and friends, nothing to do with me.
Exactly. I need to get a liability form that people sign it.
And it's so true. And that's the reason why I wanted to do this interview, because I think people will watch this and I think this will have a ripple effect, an absolute ripple effect. So you started racing and doing all of that stuff. So that in itself is really, really inspirational, really motivational. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us of kind of what then went on in your journey that taught you more?
Yeah, so I mean, through the racing, I soon realised that this bike's, you know, you're going around corners at sort of 100 miles an hour, and this bike's trying to fling you off at 100 miles an hour. So I had to learn that I had to get fitter and stronger. So that's when I found fitness. I started to do something called CrossFit, and it's very much kind of military style training. So I joined my local CrossFit gym and I became really close friends with one of the coaches. And he then said to me, oh, do you want to compete? So we've done a few competitions over in America. We've started to grow the adaptive sport in the UK. We're trying to get more and more competitions to get on board with that. And then through that, I had a few different people sort of say to me, have you ever thought about becoming a personal trainer? Because, you know, your story and you're very motivational, and, you know, I don't often like the word, but some people say that it's inspiring and stuff like that. So I thought, why not? So it's something that I really enjoyed doing. So I trained to become a personal trainer, and I'm now doing my own coaching and all that sort of stuff. but it's also led me to do the Invictus Games. So I was out in Sydney this year doing the Invictus. I got a gold and a silver in the British Rowing Championships this year. So,
Cool.
you know, stuff like that has been really cool. But then I've had a few stumbles along the way as well. You know, I've had revisionary surgery that sort of went bad. The skin got infected and stuff like that. So I've had a few knockbacks, and probably the biggest knockback for me was something we both can relate to. Was the loss of my son. He died of a mitochondrial disease. So it's like the Charlie Garr thing. I don't know if anyone ever remembers that, but this little boy had a mitochondrial disease and he lost all function, and the parents were trying to keep him alive, but the hospital was trying to stop life support.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
And so we hadn't actually got that far. I mean, my son, he was a normal, happy, healthy little boy until 18 months. And then he had something called Lee's disease, which kicked in, lost all his functions, fine motor skills, everything. And then ended up his heart and his lungs gave up on him as well. So we held him in our arms as he slipped away. But you know, first thing I done through that, you know, I couldn't sit in this bad place. So straight away, you know, my coach said, we want to raise some money. So that was it. I then focused my attention on raising all this money. We've done a charity workout in his memory. So I think we raised, I think it was like £6,000 for a charity called Tailor Made Dreams, which is a charity that gives children with life-limiting diseases their last dream. So if it's like to go to Disney World or something like that, they help pay for that, and they make their life a little bit more comfortable. And they helped Louis for the short time that he was ill. So that was a real big thing for me to focus. And now I use him for a lot of my motivation, so especially when it comes to fitness, because all the time that I'm tired, I think to myself, right, my son, he couldn't generate energy because, you know, food turns into energy that allows you to go and do all the stuff in your normal daily life, and he didn't have none of that. So I use that now as a lot of my motivation, especially when it comes to competing and stuff like that.
Yeah, because I think it's a difficult thing, isn't it, to go through a loss, and I think a loss of a child as well is just harrowing. And then to be able to turn it, because some people intend to do it, and some people say, I'm going to make this a motivation. You know, you know that I've had, I say child loss, baby loss, because I didn't actually get to the birth part of a son and a daughter, twin. And one of the hardest questions for me to answer that I've been asked is like, how do you use that as a springboard to kind of motivate yourself forward? And I actually don't think I can answer that question. I don't know. It's just something that we do.
Yeah.
You got any insights?
I think you never get over the loss.
No.
Some people say, like, how have you coped? And it's like, well, you know, everyone's got a mask.
I'm not thinking of it as coping.
Actually. Yeah, exactly. Well, everyone's got a mask. You put on a brave face. As soon as you step outside the front door, you're, hi, how's it going? And some people sort of say to you, are you not upset? It's like, oh, I'm devastated inside. You know, I'm a broken man, but I don't. The day of the funeral, we had a very small funeral and that, but I said to people, I didn't want loads of people there because I don't like to cry in public. I don't like to. I don't say it's showing weakness, but it's just for myself. I don't cry around others. So behind closed doors, you know, floods of tears, all sorts. But that's how I deal with things. But I think the hole is always there. So you've always got this hole in where of the loss.
Yeah.
But life just takes over. So you go back to work, you start to get busy again, and things are always happening around you that you don't always get the chance to think about something. So I think as long as you allow life to come back, and you know, you go back to work, you get your hobbies, your interests, and you know, I've got my other son, who's 5-year-old, who's an absolute lunatic. So for him, he was my lifesaver. That he kept, you know, he was so funny throughout all of it. I don't know if that sounds bad or not, but
children really adapt to situations.
Yeah, exactly.
They tell it how it is and have it how it is, you know.
He was just an amazing distraction for both me and my wife. Probably more so for my wife, because, you know, she's struggled probably more than what I have, because, you know, a mother's connection to a child is, you know, there's no other bond, is there? So yeah, it's, I don't know if that makes any difference towards people, but I think, like I say, the grief is always there. Just life takes over. That's the hole is never gets any smaller. It never goes away.
Yeah,
but
it's interesting that you say that, because I kind of like think through my loss journey, and the grief is like cruel. Like you say, there is something that there is a positive benefit of the mask, and often people talk about it in a negative way, like putting on a front and everything else like that, and not accessing the feelings. And I think, like you said, as long as you're accessing those feelings, closed doors and everything else, and if you're a person that can access those feelings publicly, fine. I was actually talking to somebody yesterday about this, and I'm going to share this because I think it gives the context of what we were saying. So 4 days after I came out of hospital, completely devastated. You know, you kind of don't know whether you're going to burst into tears, whether you can trust yourself to be okay in public. And one of my friends called me, who we'd done a course sort of some years back. And when I picked up the phone, I don't even know why I answered the phone, but from going into this kind of dazed state, I went into my, hi, how are you? Everything's okay. And when I answered the phone, she was sobbing. And I remember thinking, oh gosh, she can't feel, I don't want anyone else to feel as bad as I feel right now. So I've got to make her okay. She was sobbing and she's like, oh my gosh, everything's changed. Life's so different. Oh, I just don't know how I'm gonna, like, how things are gonna be in the future. And I was like, it's okay. It's okay. You know, and I was really consoling her. And about 5 minutes into the conversation, she said, I've been made redundant. I've had that job for 19 years. And what was hilarious to me, I remember having to put my hand over the mouthpiece of the phone to laugh. Because up until that moment, I thought she'd heard about what had happened with me. And that's why she was so distraught and upset. I was like, kind of, I don't know if you've ever done the silent laugh where you kind of like this. And then I realised, but what was interesting about that moment that I realised is, it doesn't matter what the loss is. It doesn't matter what the story of a loss is. It's the way that people feel about it. It's like a loss is a loss is a loss. Yeah. It was such a timely lesson for me. And I think what it actually did was helped me to know I don't have to get over anything. But like you say, you learn to live through it, not even with it, but through it. And the thing that I will say, the passage of time does get better. And it gets a bit easier to live with it, but you never forget these things. And in a way, you don't want to. And the loop that I saw at that time, obviously, I was involved in lots of kind of environments where, like, support groups, and there were some brilliant support groups out there. There were also some places where people were trapped in this cycle. They were like, they didn't want to forget the thing that happened. And the only way that they could remember was to put themselves back in a place that wasn't necessarily helpful for them and didn't move them forward. And it's interesting, you used the term before about crossing bridges and moving forward. We still need to be able to do that whilst acknowledging a loss for what it is. And I think a lot of people probably won't understand that unless they've been through losses. And you've been through numerous, you know, the fee, the job, you know, all of these things add up. And I think, you know, this is what inspires me, that you still describe yourself as fortunate, that you're still humorous about it. You could be the most miserable person on the planet if you wanted to be. You'd have every good reason to, but you're not. And you know, you're this personal trainer, and you're helping other people with their motivation, and you're doing stuff for yourself. And that, to me, is just like amazing to hear and to watch, you know. So I just think if you're watching this video and you know of somebody who needs like some support or help just to kind of be inspired. When I say be inspired to carry on and keep building their life, then definitely share this video with them. Definitely.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think for a lot of people, you know, mental health is really sort of coming out there now. And I think everything is always set off by a trigger. So there's something that will just remind you of something that's, you know, crappy that's happened. And there's always that trigger. But for the person that's been affected, they need to realize that they want the help. If you're never going to get anywhere unless you accept the fact that you need help. When you're ready to accept the help, then there is so many people that are out there, just friends and family around you are willing to help, and then there's other organizations that are out there that are willing to help. But until you are ready yourself, it's the same that I use with fitness. You know, people that say they want to lose weight and they're going to go on a diet, or people that are going to stop smoking and everything else, unless you are ready and you want to do it, you're never going to do it. And I keep saying to people, it's like, you have to be ready to accept it, and they'll know within themselves when they are ready. You know, mindset, again, I'm such a big believer of it. The power of the mind and how it can help you, just by having little focuses or trails of thoughts or whatever, you know, will make such a massive difference. You know, if you look at things in a positive way, then you will get through it. I see so many people that tell me they can't do something. I tell them straight away, you can't use that word. You know, don't say you can't. Say you will, or you will try, or, you know, you'll find another way. But there's no reason why you can't do something. And you know, there's just loads of stuff like that I do like to use.
It's so true, because when you say you can't, despite the words that you're using, you've already made the decision in your head that you're not going to do it, that you won't do it. So you're not actually giving yourself the opportunity. And the other epidemic that I see in the world, especially given my job, you know, and you know, coaching, from exec coaching to you know, business coaching, is there seems to be this unspoken rule that people are taking on, saying that they can't ask for help. And then if they get to a point where they do ask for help, they don't accept the help, as you said. They don't openly receive it. They stop it with a yeah, but. And like, let's become used to, like, try this experiment. Go out, and anytime that you think you're going to say yes, you might say no. And anytime you're going to say no, say yes. I prefer that if you think you're going to say no, say yes anyway. Do it anyway, because you have to be open and accept help. Try complimenting somebody on the street, a complete stranger. Oh, you look great. Oh, I like your hat. Oh, this cheap thing. Oh, I got it from so-and-so. Just say thank you and really take in, like, breathe in the help. It's a good muscle to grow, to be able to accept help. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, from the point of when you're born, you're trained to see a negative. You know, everyone says, don't do this, don't do that, don't, you know, and
don't touch it.
Exactly. Look out for the dinosaur with the big teeth. Never mind, like, look at that lovely butterfly over there. You know, you're always looking for the dangerous, the negatives, and, you know, it's just hardwired into the brain. So to try and get outside of that, I mean, you go into London, or you go shopping or something, you're always looking around other people going, oh, I can't believe she's wearing that, or you know, have you seen that guy over there? You're just looking for bad things, aren't you? Just to make you feel better. Instead of that, just, you know, start doing a role reversal. Start looking for the good things, and it's like, I'd really love to achieve that. You know, I want to aspire to be like that, and I think stuff like that is just so powerful.
It is so powerful, and it's true. A guy called Wayne Dyer once said, "When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change." And it's true. I like to give myself these very weird and wonderful experiments. And if you get up in the morning and say, today is going to be the most amazing day, and I'm going to have the most amazing experiences, what tends to happen is the most amazing things happen. You know, you go into a supermarket and somebody says, oh, you know, we've priced it wrong, you can have it for free, or, you know, like this opportunity. And it trains you to look out for the great things in life. You know, some people will do like a gratitude journal, or, you know, at the end of the day. And one of my friends actually used to do something with her son at night. She used to call it the Mummy and Son Show. And they would basically talk about all the great things that they'd happened that day. And it really trained the son to think about all the great things that happened in life. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, you take something back to a shop, and if you have a moan at the customer services, they will do the bare minimum to help you. But if you're nice and you're polite, you compliment a person, they will move heaven and earth to help you. That's the difference, isn't it?
So true. Always see the best in people, and always look for the best in yourself. Start with yourself and look for the best in others too. So, oh, I've loved this chat. It could go on and on and on.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you want to kind of close, or any message that you want to give for somebody who might be watching this?
I think for myself, I always say to people, like, set yourself some goals. Make sure they're achievable, short-term goals, long-term goals. You know, make sure they're within your reach. Just by doing the simple things will give you such a big uplift and help you in the direction that you want to go. I mean, I'm always about world domination. I keep saying to, you know, I'm a bit like Del Boy, this time next year I'll be a millionaire and all that sort of stuff. But I just think, like, having that mentality just keeps you going forwards. Every time you get knocked down, you get back up, don't you? I've had some pretty big hurdles, and I keep picking myself up. And, you know, I like to show people that what can be achieved, instead of giving up on stuff. You know, turn a bad thing into a positive.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, with that, what I would say is, if you've watched this, if somebody shared it with you, and you have found any element of this motivational, please, like, connect with Murray online. You're on Twitter, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Murray Hambro, and Instagram is at Legolas912, and Facebook as well.
Yeah, excellent. So yeah, 9/12, 9th of December,
yeah.
Which is why I mentioned that date quite a lot. So thank you so much for this, and thank you for living the life that you have lived in the way that you've lived it. You've honoured your younger self that thought you might go down the wrong path, or you know, down the wrong way. I think you certainly, like, made up for that tenfold, not only by the way you live your life. I really believe in the ripple effect. So you've created ripples for yourself, for your family, for the people that come into contact with you, for the people that you're training. I love a good ripple effect, and you've definitely created a big one. So you know, I really would encourage anyone who is looking for somebody to really motivate, whether it's your team, your sales team, whether it's a health and fitness thing, whether maybe it's the medical profession, and you see a gap where people are going through something to kind of coming out the other side like Murray has. Really, please do get in touch with him. Get in touch with me if you want to, and I'll forward it on, but get in touch with Murray, because, yeah, I think the things that you've lived through and the things that you are living through are definitely causing a massive ripple effect. Let's not stop it here. So find him on Twitter at Murray Hambro. I'll put the links actually underneath this as well, and find him on Instagram, or find him out on Facebook. Thank you so much for doing this. I'm so grateful to you. And
thank you.
I'll speak to you soon. Thank you. Thank you for watching, everyone.